Hey, German Classic Catering. We are cooking chicken with tomato and artichoke and black olives today, and also some cheddar cheese jalapeno biscuits. So let's get started. Like normal, I have all my stuff laid out ahead of time. Stirring utensils, knives. I have some fresh parsley, a couple extra bowls around. I have garlic, pimento, my softened butter that I took out earlier today for the garlic butter. For the actual pasta dish, it's going to be your artichokes, black olives. There's some garlic, salt and pepper. This is jalapeno, onion, celery, broccoli, parmesan is going to be our side dish, and of course the famous Weiler's chicken powder. I've also got our white pepper, salt, black pepper, canned diced tomatoes, our Bisquick mix for the biscuits that we're making, which are already measured out, and our cheddar cheese blend and half and half. Alright, I also have all my other pans set up for the cooking process. I have my large pan with my lid handy. That's going to be for the tomato and artichoke mix. I've got a smaller saucepan back here with some water in it for the broccoli. And then I've got a pan right here with water, which is going to be used to cook my noodles. I also have my tray set out that we're going to cook the biscuits on. I prefer to use these non-Teflon aluminum pans. You can buy these at Gordon Food Service. They're about 12 bucks for one, so a little bit more expensive than maybe a Teflon. But the nice thing is they are pretty durable. You can use a metal scrub pad on them to keep them clean. I've had this one for probably 3 or 4 years, and it's just about like brand new. And it doesn't have Teflon, so it'll never wear out on you. Okay, first thing we're going to do is make our garlic butter. That's going to be one of the key ingredients. So what I have here is our salted butter. I've softened it up today. I took it out of the fridge and let it sit out at room temperature, so it's going to be really easy to work with. So the first thing we're going to do for that is we're going to take some of this diced pimento. I bought it from Kroger. We're going to put a little bit of that in here, maybe a tablespoon or so. Really just depends on how you want it to look for the color and a little bit of flavor. Most of the flavor is going to come from the actual garlic, which is right here. I bought this from Kroger today because I wanted to buy peeled garlic, and I was pleasantly surprised when I opened up the package and noticed that inside of the package has all these individually packed, they're cryovacs, so they last a couple of weeks probably in your fridge. So these are all super nice. That's the equivalent of one package of garlic right there. So that was a nice surprise. So what we're going to do with our garlic, there's a couple different ways to do garlic for cooking dishes. You can just slice it like this. When I do slice, I like to use my fingers to hold it down like this with my nails if possible, and just do a quick slice like this, and using your fingers as a guide. It's the safe knife technique is what I call it, and that gives you some really nice slices of garlic like that. It's always good to just be careful when you're using a sharp knife because you don't want to cut a finger, nail, or even a little nick of skin. So I'm going to do a couple more like this. And I'm going to show you another technique that sometimes chefs will use to process their garlic. So that's that, basically a quick slice. Another way to do the garlic is you can smash it. So you're basically going to lay your knife on there and just give it a smash so that it looks like that. So we're going to smash these real quick, just like that, and just like that. And then what I like to do sometimes is I'll take a little bit of the kosher salt. Kosher salt's just a coarser ground salt. We sprinkle a little kosher salt right in there, and the coarseness of that is going to help us use this. Basically what we're going to do is we're just using the back of our knife and my hand on top of it, and we're just making a little puree right here. If we just keep working this around, the salt in there helps make it into a paste because of the coarseness of it. Gives it some texture to work with. So you can see that literally took me about 10 seconds to make some garlic paste out of that. So that's a couple of different ways to use garlic. So we're going to put that in there, and then I'm just going to quickly turn this into a paste also. So we got that all ready to go. That's going in. Then I have my fresh parsley right here. I'm using the same board right now for this part of the cooking because all these ingredients are going into the same dish. So I've already washed this. I dried it with paper towel. Usually I take a piece off. We kind of squish it, pack it down like so, get all the air out of it. And using the exact same technique with a knife is we're just going to do a quick dice on this, or chop actually. And we're going to go through it once until you get to the end. All right, so it's almost there already. Now we're going to go back through it like this, just a couple times, just to chop it up. You can use the processed parsley that you buy in a spice container at the store, but it's dried parsley, and quite honestly, it has nowhere near the flavor and aroma as fresh. So try to use fresh if at all possible. Okay, I got my parsley, my garlic, my pimento in the bowl. I'm also going to put some of the kosher salt in there as well. And what I'm going to first do is, because it's softened up, I'm just going to take it with my hands. Nice thing about having gloves at home is you can use your hands to do a lot of these manual mixing things. Hands actually work way better than trying to use a spoon or a wire whip for this. So you can see as I'm squeezing it, I'm just letting the butter and everything incorporate together. That's pretty much mixed together already. Now what I'm going to do is I have my trusty Hamilton mix beater here. We're going to take this, we're just going to beat this on high, and the idea is to make it a little bit lighter and fluffier by whipping some air into it. So we're just going to let this go for about a minute or so. Alright, another half a minute, we'll be ready to go. Alright, that is completed. I've got my handy spoon here. We're just going to take this and scrape it all down off the sides. Make sure that it's all incorporated. Give it one last spin. And there you have it, some delicious garlic butter. Alright, so I have my celery mostly done already off camera. I have a little bit more than I have here, so I'm basically just going to split that. And just like any of the cuts we're doing, you want to keep the knife against the back of your fingers or the front of your fingers right here, so you don't cut yourself, and kind of use your fingers as a guide. And then once we start cutting the onions, you can kind of just do the same thing. You'll see a lot of chefs will do a side cut like this once or twice, but the way an onion's constructed, it's ribs of onions that fit together like this, so there's already layers of onions in there, so to me that middle cut's not really necessary. As you'll see, once I cut these the cross way, they're pretty much going to be cut to a nice uniform consistency. So we don't like to do a lot of extra cuts if possible, because it's less time spent cutting and less ways to cut yourself. So that's basically it. Those are ready. So we're going to take these last couple little nuggets and chop those up real quick. This is all going to go back over here just for the time being. And I'm going to show you a couple of the quick cuts right here. I have some jalapenos right here for the biscuits. And normally what I do is I'll use a fresh jalapeno, but I didn't have any handy today. So I'm going to just take a couple of the refrigerated kind that are packed in a brine. We're just going to give these a quick chop also. And these are going to go right into our muffin mix, or biscuit mix rather. That'll be for later. I just wanted to chop those while I was cutting things. And then lastly, we're just going to give this board a quick flip like this. We have our broccoli crown here, and I like to buy crowns as opposed to the whole broccoli. It'll have the stem. I don't like to buy those because they're sold by the pound, so you're wasting a lot of money on the actual stems instead of just the edible part. I'm going to grab another knife here real quick so I can show you how to do these, show you how to do the broccoli. So basically I'm going to take this, and you can see right here where all the individual buds go into the stem. So I'm going to cut that off just like that, and that'll break it into smaller florets. And then what we usually do is just pluck these apart like this. You can see they're real easy to distinguish where they're going to crack off. And then once it gets to the very center part, you're going to give it another cut, just like that. And then you've got all these perfectly shaped little broccoli florets. They do sell these in the store, but they're considerably more expensive to buy them, so I like to just buy 1 or 2 crowns and just give them a quick chop like this, and then they're basically done and ready to go. And what I'm going to do with these right now is I'm just going to take these and I'm going to put them in my water right now. We're going to steam these later, and then I'm going to add, while I'm getting everything ready, I'm going to take some of that Weiler's chicken powder, and we're going to just cook them in a small amount of chicken stock and water, and then we'll also add some salt and some black pepper to that, and then we'll put it back on the stove, not turned on yet, and that'll be ready for us later on. Alright, so next thing we're going to do, I've turned on my water from my pasta, so that starts getting ready. I bought these beautiful chicken breasts at the meat counter at the store. I've already washed them and patted them dry. Bought about 1.25 pounds. These are really nice. I like to buy fresh because a lot of times some of the chicken that you buy frozen in the store, it comes injected with a solution. They call it a solution of chicken broth. But it tends to be a little bit rubbery sometimes when you prepare it. So I like to buy the fresh with no added moisture to it. These are a little bit thick, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our knife and we're just going to basically cut these in half widthwise. So keeping all your fingers out of the way, we're going to give it a nice slice. Try to stay right in the middle of it, like that. So now you've got 2 pieces that are roughly the same thickness. And from this point, we're going to take these and we're going to cut these into thin strips. If you remember when I made the gumbo the other day, I took the exact same technique to the chicken that we used for that. I just had it done ahead of time. So I wanted to show you a quick way to cut that. And then I'm just going to buzz through these real quick without talking, because you can just pretty much watch without me talking every single second. Alright, just about done with that one. And one more. And again, this will be for our pasta. We're going to cook this in that garlic butter that we made earlier. And then we'll add the tomato product to it and simmer that along with our other ingredients, and then we'll be ready to go. Alright, we're going to get our biscuits going real quick. So I'm just using a basic Bisquick baking mix. All-purpose. You can use it for pancakes, biscuits, waffles, whatever you like. So I'm using it for the biscuits today. I've got the jalapeno in there and 2¼ cups of the mix. We're going to add some, it calls for milk, but I'm using half and half today to give it some extra richness. It calls for 2/3 of a cup, so there's 1/3 of a cup, and there's 2/3. So we're going to dump that in there, and then we're going to just mix this up real quick. I was going to use a wire whip, but I think a spoon will be better so it doesn't clump up. So really super simple to make this. I did add a little bit of salt to this mixture also earlier. And it's just pretty much as simple as that. So that is ready to go. We're going to throw the cheese in there at the last minute. Cheese just depends on how cheesy you want it to be. If you want a little flavor, just add a little bit. Or if you like them real cheesy, feel free to add as much as you want. So there's all that. So we got this mixed up. Once you can kind of see that the cheese is all incorporated to the mix, it's going to be super easy to make these up into biscuit-sized portions. I'm going to just do a little wipe like that. I'm going to grab a spoon real quick. You can use 2 different ways to do these. You can use the 2-spoon method and spoon them onto here, which would be just taking one like this and using a spoon to plop it off just like that. Or you can use your finger also. Either one works, but we're just going to bang these out real quick. This makes about 8 biscuits, so we're just going to divide this equally into right around 8 portions. Again, with this type of pan, they're very durable. They will last you a really long time, and they're highly recommended. You can get them at Gordon Food Service, Restaurant Depot, Cisco, US Foods, but probably the easiest accessible one would be Gordon Food Service. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and as promised, it makes 8. So we're just going to take this real quick, and we're going to scrape all this out. And there's the finger method that I mentioned. As long as you got a couple inches between each one, you're going to be good. Going to take these and spread them out a little bit, And that's basically it. They're going to go in the oven. They take about 8 or 9 minutes, and away they go. Alright, we're getting ready to start cooking our vegetables, which are going to be part of our tomato sauce. I've got my squeezed jar of olive oil from the other day. My pan's already been heating up a little bit, so we're just going to put a little bit of that in there, and you can see it smokes up instantly, so maybe a little bit too hot on there, but that's alright. In go the vegetables. We're going to let these cook at a lower heat for about 8 minutes or so until they get softened up. We're going to put some salt and some pepper in there so we get some layering flavors going during our sauce preparation. I've got my little spatula. It's got a little garlic butter on there, but it's not going to hurt anything because it's going to be part of the sauce anyways, and it'll just be one less messy thing to wash later. Alright, it's been about 8 or 9 minutes. We've got our celery and onion all the way cooked down. You can kind of get a look at how it looks. It's softened up and translucent. And just like the other day with the gumbo, we've got some crispy stickage at the bottom of the pan, so I got my hot water. We're just going to put a little bit of that in there and stir it around. That's going to cause that to deglaze and scrape all that loose, and that's going to become part of our sauce as well. And I've already opened up my canned tomatoes right here. This particular brand, it's a Midwest tomato as opposed to a California tomato, and I like to use canned tomatoes for this because they have a chemical agent in there. It's called sodium chloride, and basically that helps the tomatoes from becoming mushy and breaking down and just turning into a smooth sauce while cooking. So just kind of look for that when you're buying them. But I chose this particular brand. They're made from tomatoes in Michigan as well as the Midwest by a farming company called Herzell Family. So that is going in there. We're going to let those start cooking. And then I've got my boiling water right here, which has been boiling for quite a few, so it's at a full boil. We're going to throw a little bit of kosher salt in there, maybe a couple teaspoons. And then we're also going to get a little bit of a squirt of our oil in there too. Some people swear by oil on their pasta, saying it helps it from preventing it to stick. Other people will just use it just with salt. So we're going to put our noodles in there, and as they cook, they're going to become pliable, and we're going to bend that to fit. Another option you can do is break these in half like that and put them all in at once, but I decided to leave them whole for today. You can already see they're kind of getting a little bit pliable, so we're just going to let those soften up a little bit more. Then those will all be able to fall into the water, and we'll stir them up so they don't stick, and we'll be good to go. So while that's doing its thing over there in the noodle pan, we've got all of our ingredients are now stirred together. We're going to add another layer of salt and pepper to this mix right here to give it some nice flavor for the tomatoes. And I'm also going to add a small amount of that Weiler's chicken powder. This gives it some extra depth and richness, as well as some sodium salt content, which is just going to help it develop into a really nice sauce. So we're going to let this simmer, turn my heat up a little bit. This is going to simmer about 20 minutes. And then we'll attend to our noodles one more time over here. You can see they're just about ready to go all the way underwater. I'm going to find some tongs real quick. You can see I have a nicely stocked drawer here. I've got all kinds of spoons and whips and pastry brushes and these kind of tongs and the regular tongs. So always nice to have a nice full drawer of utensils at your disposal. Alright, so once these are starting to get completely softened up, as I said, it just takes about a minute or so, maybe a minute and a half, and we're just going to make sure they're stirred up good and underwater completely, and then we're going to let these cook until they get al dente, probably about 8 minutes. Alright, it's probably been about 10 or 12 minutes. We have a lot of things happening all at once. Our jalapeno cheddar biscuits are done. You can see I just free-formed them. I didn't really make them so they're completely round. They look kind of like a more natural shape. Then in my steaming, sizzling pot here, I've got my noodles, which are completely done. I've stirred them several times while we were away. And then this is the tomato sauce, which is also bubbling up nicely. So what we're going to do first right now is we have to take our pasta off the stove. I've got my strainer in the sink and ready to go. So we're going to take this over there, and we're just going to carefully pour that into the strainer. And what I like to do myself, this is my personal preference, I'm not a big fan of rinsing my noodles, especially if I'm going to eat them right away. So I'm going to let these just strain like this. We're going to toss them, get all the water out of them. They're going to go back in the pot that they came them out of. It's still hot. We're going to take a little bit of our oil and we're just going to give them a little drizzle of the olive oil mix. This will help. That's hot. This will help prevent them from caking up and sticking together. So we're going to toss those around, put those right back onto the stove. I'm going to put it in the back here because that burner and that whole area is still kind of hot and we don't want to keep them cooking. So the noodles are ready to go. Here's my tomato sauce. You can kind of see right here there's a little bit of foam starting to occur from cooking of the tomatoes. And what we like to do sometimes is we'll skim that off with a spoon so that the tomatoes are a little less acidic and not as bitter. But if you find you get a batch of tomatoes that are a little bit bitter or a little more acidic than you want, you can add a sprinkle of sugar in here, like a teaspoon, just to kind of sweeten up the mix a little bit. So there's our tomato mix. We're going to get ready to start cooking our chicken and we'll be ready to eat soon. Alright, so today I'm going to do it a little different. I'm just going to make one individual plate size of this as opposed to a whole pot like I did for the gumbo. So the tomato sauce is basically done. I've turned this down just to a very low simmer, as low as it can go. The broccoli back here, if you remember, that's got the chicken powder in it. I just turned that on full heat so we can get that cooking. Then over here what we're going to do, I've got my pan heating up right here. I took some of that garlic butter that we made and we're just going to melt a little hotter than I want it to be, so we're just going to take it off for a second. We're going to take about, whatever that is, a couple tablespoons of that, and we're going to throw in just enough chicken for one person right now, and we're going to let that cook. If you find the pan to be too hot and you don't want your butter to burn, what you can do is add a little bit of olive oil in there. That will increase the smoke point of the oil so it doesn't actually burn. You can cook it at a higher temperature without scorching it. So as you can see, this is already cooking up nicely. Some of the chicken's already turned white. I'm just separating all that so it's one even layer of chicken. And we're going to turn that way down now so it just kind of simmers a little bit. Then what we'll do is we're going to add our tomato sauce to this, our black olives and our artichokes and a little bit of the parsley. Throw our cooked noodles in there, and then we're just going to throw it on the plate with one of our biscuits and our broccoli parmesan, and we'll be ready to eat. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. We've simmered our chicken on low heat once it got over that smoky period. So you can see we got a nice garlic butter cooked chicken right here. It's actually about 3/4 of the way cooked. You don't want to cook it all the way through right away because it is going to cook a little bit more. We're going to add probably about a cup's worth of this tomato Provencal mixture that we made. We're just going to stir all that in. Then one thing I did not do, but we can do it right now, it's not a big deal, is we're going to take a pinch of that fresh parsley and add it to that dish, and the rest can go right in our pot. So that's in there. I chopped that up earlier when we were off camera. Besides what I put in the biscuit mix earlier. Then we're going to take our black olives. We're going to give them a sprinkle, just enough for one serving right now, and the artichokes. Now both of these vegetables are fully cooked. You don't want to cook them too vigorously because especially the artichokes, they'll break down and deteriorate and just become little bits and pieces. And this you want it to be kind of a chunky and hearty dish. So we're going to let all that come together for about 30 seconds. We're going to turn our heat up just a tad bit, and then we're going to take our noodles. These are the noodles that I cooked earlier, and we have the olive oil in there, so they're not really clumped together at all. We're going to put one portion of the noodles in here right on top like this, and we're going to let them slowly become part of this dish also and get covered with all that sauce and the chicken and the artichokes and the olives. Alright, so then in my back pan right here, this is already basically complete. It's my broccoli that we're going to do the broccoli parmesan with. So that is fully steamed. If you'll notice, I only put about maybe a cup's worth of water in there. You don't need to immerse it completely in water. It doesn't have to be boiled. It just has to be steamed. So we're going to take some of this. We're going to pour all that out. That's just the steaming liquid that had the chicken in it. So that is going to be sitting right on there. Then, excuse me while I just grab a couple of items off camera. We're going to give this a sprinkle of our Parmesan cheese, just like that. And then we're also going to give that a little bit of the butter. I usually have some butter sitting out at room temperature so that it's easy to use. It's not frozen or refrigerated solid all the time, so you can see this is nice and soft. We're going to just throw that butter in there, and we're going to toss this around. Everything's going to melt, including the cheese and the butter. And then we're going to give this a little bit of salt and pepper mix, which is off camera, so I got my shakers real quick. We're going to give them some pepper, some salt, and then just a little bit more cheese so we have some that's not melted. And that's going to be our side dish to go with this delicious meal. Alright, so here it is. We're all set. We're going to take it over here to put it on our plate. We've got our noodles. What I usually do is like to just give the noodles a quick twirl like this. And we're going to just gather them all up. And we're going to make a nice nest right on our plate. We're going to take some of the chicken, the artichokes, and the olives, and we're just going to pile that right on top. I made a little bit more than I might eat on this particular time, but that's alright. It's still going to look great on the plate. Then we're just going to take all of our delicious sauce that's left over, and we're going to sprinkle that right on top, just like so. And lastly, we're going to take some of our cheddar jalapeno biscuits, which turned out perfect. A little dark on the bottom, but that's alright. And then a little bit of the broccoli parmesan as our side dish right here on our lovely glass plate assortment that we have. And we are ready to have a delicious meal. Appreciate you tuning in, and please check out our Facebook page at Classic Catering of the Shores.